what's funny about it is that I guess for a lot of people, today's the day to suddenly come to that realization, and then tomorrow night after they beat Washington, we'll go back the other way. Like I don't want at any point this year to be thinking about the playoffs or a championship run yet. You know, Draymond Green, are you a contender? Right. What's he going to say? Of course he's going to say yes. Does he believe it? You know what's funny about that comment, that Draymond said they're a championship contender? Well, how on earth can we believe those kinds of answers ever again? You told us all last year you were a championship contender. The minute you lost, you were like, this was never a championship team. Then Draymond says on his podcast also very, very recently that even the year that they won 2 years ago, he's looking at Steph after each round going, how the hell is this happening?
Right.
This isn't a championship team. Turns out that it was. But the answer's always going to be yes until it's over, and then they'll tell you what they really, really feel. So, of course, Draymond's going to say that right now. How would we react if he said otherwise?
We wouldn't love it. And so, yeah, they have to think that they're championship contenders, and they are, to the extent that they can make it in the play-in and win a game or two as needed and get into the playoffs, and then you can see if they can beat the team that they have against them. The reason why I won't react with a win over Washington or a loss to the New York Knicks or a win over Toronto or a loss against Boston in this 4-game trip, last night was a bit of a litmus test game for me because they had been playing so well, and it felt like they have become a different team. And you went out and you played maybe not your A game, but your B game, maybe your B-plus game. You played pretty well against Denver, and it wasn't good enough. And that is why I think the word Steiny used earlier fits for me. It was a bit sobering because you did go out and you played a good basketball game against a really good team.
You thought last night that they played well?
They played great for
quarter and a half.
They played amazing for a quarter and a half.
Yeah, that's not a basketball game.
Well, Denver's good.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you completely folded up. I don't think you gave the game away. I think you went up against the best player in the league. Draymond said it on his podcast. He had no answers for the Joker, who had, 32, 16, and 16? And it was almost an effortless performance. And your alleged number 2 scorer, Klay Thompson, didn't score in the second half. Denver clamped down on defense, and you got beat.
Yeah, that's why I have a really hard time saying that the Warriors went out and played well. They shot 43% from the field. Their best player was 1 of 10 from 3. Yes, Klay Thompson had a really good first half, and the Warriors played a good quarter and a half. After that, they didn't play well at all. And yes, Denver gets a lot of credit for that. But I don't that's why, sobering, yes, because you were on a run and you really wanted another signature win, and you've been so close against Denver the last 3 times, so you figured maybe this would be the one where you could bust through. But as far as playing 4 good quarters against Denver, I think their other games earlier this year are a better example of that than last night.
But you had been playing great. And so you came into this game and it felt like this would be a time that, you'd won 10 of 12 and you had kind of found your footing. You have recovered your season. You've gotten back in the mix. You're playing at home. It felt like this is a game, if you were going to beat Denver, it would be this one. And now you go out on a road trip that's a little bit of a mixed bag. 2 good teams, 2 not so good teams, and the expectation of 2-2 I think is real. 3-1 would be wonderful.
Yeah.
And if it's 2-2, then you're kind of stuck in the same spot. It feels like, and George made this statistical comment, that your record against the good teams has been pretty bad this year.
It's been terrible. It's been absolutely terrible. And that's what's sobering about last night. It's not that for me, it's not that they played well and still got it handed to them. I don't think they played very well. What's sobering, even if I just give you the last half of February, is that once again, you show when a good team comes to town, just like the Clippers 2 weeks ago, you can build up a lead, play well for portions of the game, but you can't close it. And even when you're in the midst of playing well, I know they beat Phoenix a few days before that, although that was with that kind of miracle finish from Steph Curry. That's what's sobering to me, is that you got to February and you think you're a better team than what you've shown in November, December, and January. But when you get those chances to show it against the good teams, you largely haven't been able to do it.
1-9 against the top three in the West, Minnesota, OKC, and Denver. And that's, 0-4 against Denver. OKC, you got the one victory. You probably should have had another, if not two other ones.
Well, that's what's so maddening about this year's team.
Yeah.
Is you're looking at this record going, I can count in my head half of them that they had. They had them. They find a way.
1-0 against Boston, 0-2 against Cleveland, 0-1 against Milwaukee, the top three in the East. And you got Boston again coming up on this trip. So that to me is the part that makes me kind of pause before we start talking about, May and June basketball.
Well, you got your chances here in the next couple of weeks to reverse that thought. You go to Madison Square Garden on Thursday. You're in Boston on Sunday. As George said, the following Wednesday, week and a half from now, Giannis will be in town. You've got trips later this month to Dallas and Minnesota. When I say this month, later in the month of March, you got a trip to the Lakers. In theory, LeBron will play. The Mavericks, you get to both see them here and there. All of that stuff. You're gonna have your opportunities, and no doubt, as we even said, if you're only relying on the cupcake games that are left on your schedule, you're going to go about 500 the rest of the way. And you're going to be either the 9 or the 10 seed. They're going to have to bust through on some of these games. You don't have to do a lot of them. You don't even have to do most of them. But if you just win 4 or 5 of these games against big boys and take care of all the others, then that's when you can start to look at the 7, the 8, who knows, maybe even the 6.
Right. Even 2 or 3 of those games, because you've been dominant against the cupcakes. You are, 1-0 against San Antonio, 2-0 against Utah, 3-0 against Portland. So you've handled the cupcakes. The only one that hurts is that Memphis game where we all learned what a G.G. Jackson is.
Didn't know.
Nobody knew.
Didn't know. I still don't, quite frankly. I forgot it. I've repressed it.
Yeah.
Let's hear from you. 888-957-9570. We'll go to Vince in the city. Hey, Vince, what's up? What's cooking?
Hey, what's up, guys? I've been telling my family, who are Warrior fans, since the beginning of the season that, we go on these runs where, like you guys are saying, we beat up on these bad teams, and then we're really close. Like, look at the clutch stat, or whatever you want to call it, the 5 points or less games against good teams, and we are not getting it done. I'm just being real. I don't think there's any shot that we make it out of a play-in or a first round at most this season, which leads me to my point. I think this is a personnel issue. I've said it. I've called in before. I think there's too many players on this team that overlap in position and talent, and I don't know what roster moves can be made in the offseason next season or after this season. What do you guys think, and do you think there's a real chance that they can have the dream scenario of Giannis?
Vince, thanks. I'll answer the last question first. No, I don't. And then the second answer, going back to your first question of what offseason moves can they make, I honestly think it's way too early to even get into the conversation, because before you do that, you need the information as to whether or not what you're saying is correct. Are you accurate that this is a roster construction issue? George said something interesting in the conversation he just had with us. He didn't talk about Denver being like overwhelmingly talented. He said they're constructed so well.
Right.
It's kind of what we were talking about in the crossover about Aaron Gordon. They've got all these pieces, maybe outside of Jokic, none of whom are great, but a bunch of good, and they're defined and they fit. That's what the Warriors are missing right now, and you need the information of how is the season going to end before you really know how they need to go reconstruct the thing if they do. The Warriors right now, like the Nuggets, they've got one great player, and then they've got a bunch of good. However, it's not constructed well like Denver. You have spots where you're too young. You have spots where you're too old. You have size issues. You're not getting productivity out of people that a couple of years ago you got major productivity and therefore won a title, like Kevon Looney. So you're just kind of constructed in a way right now that has not proven itself to work. However, arrow has been up last few weeks. let's see how this ends and see who's available before you can look into the offseason and start predicting moves.
Giannis is going to make 48.8 next year. Then it goes to 68.3, 73.8, and then a player option for 79.2.
What?
79.2. If I'm him, I'm opting in on 79.2.
Yeah, who knows?
That's $1 million a game.
It might be underpaid by that.
Maybe. That's 2027/28. I do think Jamal Murray is a star. Whether or not he's a superstar.
Really good player.
And again, it's part of it is the fit. He's averaging 20 a night
Yep.
because he doesn't have to be the one. But if he's your two, and we were talking about tandems earlier, and I ran through all of them during the break, and the Luka-Kyrie tandem actually is the highest scoring in basketball, but that's about all they have. Denver does have a great starting five, a good solid bench, a coach who knows his way around June basketball. They're the whole package.
Yep. The Warriors need somebody who's going to average 20, 22 a night. And they've always had that. His name was Klay Thompson.
Right.
And now he doesn't start.
And he doesn't average that anymore.
He's not going to average that, probably. He's clearly got the ability to do it some of the time. He doesn't have to do the ability to do it all of the time. And in the NBA, you have to do it all of the time. It doesn't mean you can't have an off night, but your average night, right? Because Steph averages 28, but sometimes he scores 60. You need someone who has the ability to consistently get himself north of 20 points. It looked like Kuminga was flirting with that, and Draymond said he's grown into a legit two. Then all of a sudden his minutes went down a little bit, and the plan around him seemed to go down a little bit. I just think for me, what defines the Warriors this year is the lack of definition. They're trying too many things, too many different roles. We're all talking about Klay to the bench. Even the idea that they're just doing that now suggests to you that they're still searching for what's in the stew with 25 plus games to go. That's not what you're not supposed to be searching anymore. It's go time.
Right.
You know exactly who you are, what you're trying to do, and go do it. And I think the Warriors are still struggling with that.
I think that they know who they are, and it's exactly what you've described before, and it's the challenge of Steve Kerr as the head coach. You don't know night to night who your two is, who your three is. Your two, you're relying on is a guy in his third year who is making that third-year leap, and you want him to go ahead and be your second-best player, your second-best scorer. If Jonathan Kuminga is being asked to do that, then you're not going anywhere in the playoffs. You don't normally make a good run, a deep run with a 20-year-old who's going to be your number two when you're surrounded by 35-year-old veterans.